I just want to murder myself.
It just doesn't feel right, he said.
It
I
just
can
doesn't
do
feel
it, it
right.
just hurts me inside.
It, it's emotional damage.
Yeah, there you go. Ah. Anyway, so we got our pleasantries out of the way. Not that there's
Well,
anything,
let's yeah,
you know.
let's start the stream off properly. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, fantabulosis. That's a real word. I didn't make it up right there and then. I swear.
No, it is a real word.
Um,
If you don't believe him, go ask South Wales.
if, yeah, if you don't believe me, go fuck yourself. Wow, that's harsh logic. Jeez,
He doesn't owe
get off on a good
you.
start. No, I don't know. You should. So, I've been kind of smashing Buffy. Wait, phrasing. The show. I've been I've been smashing the show. I'm deep into season two. Where am I? I'm up to Lie to Me. So I'm like
Lie
halfway
to
through
me.
season two already. Mm.
God damn. I think I am not quite that far. Um, where
I
am I in
like
season two?
so before we start going into like season one and discussing that, what I want to say is I fucking love season two, and I've forgotten how much I love season two. I don't think there's okay. Inca Mummy Girl, not the strongest, but so far I have just devoured it all. It's like a big bit of cake,
Oh,
and
once you.
I'm allowed to just eat the whole cake. I
Well,
just can go for it. Doesn't matter.
yeah.
It's my cake.
There. I think I'm all the way down to. Let me see. I think I'm all the way down to I only have eyes for you in season two.
um, Only have eyes for you.
It's the one
I'm
where
looking to. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, you're ahead of me. Yeah, you're a fair bit ahead of me.
yeah. But man, season two, once you get into it, like I said, season one
Yeah,
of like of any kind of show usually struggles. I think a lot of the time the actors are still trying to find out who their character really is. The writers are still trying to find a good niche and still trying to find a good rhythm to the show. I also think it's just hard to start something new. Um,
yeah.
just because it is like it's just not that easy. So season two is a lot easier to digest and a lot easier to just whip through because it's so exciting. Honestly, season one, there's definitely some like standout episodes, but there's definitely some that are like kind of sluggish, and you're like, ugh. But
There's That's not to say that like I'm just looking at what I've watched so far in season two. Some Assembly Required. That's the one with the girl that they make up. That is, I mean, it's pretty cringe and so on.
yeah,
Inca Mommy Girl. I'd say a bit a step up from Some Assembly Required. Reptile Boy actually gets quite a bad IMDb rating, but I didn't mind that too much.
really, neither did I. A fun fact about
Then
the Inca Mummy Girl one is the
she's a mega
guy.
babe.
Well, yeah. Well, and the guy who is supposed to be the one like guarding the mummy, that guy is
Oh yeah,
actually
yeah.
in Twilight. He's the dad of Jacob Black. He's Billy Black, and I
Oh,
was like, that
hilarious.
is
Okay.
fucking hilarious to me because like everyone and their mum, if they were an actor in like the late '90s, early 2000s, basically had a spot on Buffy for like 1 second. Like even Pedro Pascal has recently
Sure.
shared about his experience on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and so it's so funny
Fuck off,
to
is he in
me.
it?
Yeah, yeah,
That guy
yeah,
gets everywhere. He's
yeah.
so. I may be overstepping my line here because I'm a nobody sat in a spare bedroom in the middle of nowhere. But fuck Pedro Pascal, that guy is so fucking overrated. He's everywhere.
Yeah,
I don't get it. I do not get it.
yeah. I
And
mean,
that's it.
he's a handsome, spiffy guy, but at the same time, like,
Is that what it is?
yeah,
Is it just the ladies kind of get a bit moist?
yeah. I think even some fellas, reportedly,
Well,
but
yeah. Well,
I.
they don't get moist. They get
Hey, listen, their
they get
pants
something
might,
else.
but they get stiff. But yeah, I mean, it's not like he's an excellent actor above the rest or
Nope.
anything. It's just one of
Nope.
those preference things. And right now he's
It's just in
being
everything as well.
pushed. Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because he talked about his experience on Buffy, and he said something about, like, I was ready to give up on acting, but then I got a residual from Buffy. And that was enough to
Oh,
help
right,
pay
okay.
for me to continue acting for the time being, and that's why I am where I am, is that residual from Buffy. And he just talked about, like, Sarah Michelle was fantastic, just like the nicest. Everyone on set was great. Like it was just like a great experience, basically. A feather
She
in
does
your
seem
hat.
really pleasant. Like in interviews and that, she just seems quite sweet and so forth.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I've never heard a negative thing said about Sarah Michelle Gellar. Um, I can't.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, yeah. So good for her and good for the show. The other thing I wanted to bring up right from the get is that they did not give Michelle Trachtenberg an in memoriam segment for the Oscars, and I was like,
Really
"Yep."
interesting.
Everyone was
I
really
didn't watch
upset.
anything to do with the Oscars because
Me
I
either, though.
cannot bear mainstream sort of Hollywood stuff at the moment. I find it unbelievably tedious. And again, Pedro Pascal's like a great example. Everything's pushed.
Yep.
You will like Pedro Pascal. You will like the next Marvel's film, and it's like I haven't liked Marvel's for 10 years. I think it's been tragic for a long time.
Yeah.
There's probably I can count the amount of Marvel films I like on one hand. But I'm just a grumpy old man, so it's hard to please me. But that's really sad. And again, I know we covered this last time, but like in hindsight, I think I was a bit rough because her character's not that bad. And actually, we rewatched Euro Trip,
Yeah.
and she's great in that. She's a lot of fun. So I do think I was a little harsh on her.
Well, and I think
Not
it's
entirely unwarranted.
yeah.
Definitely a bit harsh.
Well, and I think too, like a lot of people find her so annoying as Dawn, and I think that's specifically because Dawn's supposed to be annoying. Like she's the little sister who gets everything Buffy wants. She doesn't have responsibilities like Buffy does. She's just naturally a nuisance.
Ken Joffrey effect, like whatever the little Irish kid that played Ken Joffrey, and he said, well, because he quit acting because everyone was like, I hate you, and it's kind of like he played his role so brilliantly. Ken Joffrey's a piece of shit, and he played it so well that like he had to quit acting. So maybe there's an element of that where actually, she did a good job of being that bratty, annoying little sister, and I've got I'm the eldest of four, and I know what it's like having a younger sister who gets everything all the time. It just gets away. So maybe there's an element there. I don't know. Like it's kind of interesting thinking about these things, sort of trying to be introspective about it.
Yeah. Especially like instead of just, I think too, like the difference between doing the podcast about it versus just consuming the content is you're trying to think about these things as you're watching. Like
Yes.
And me, I'm always like, why is that character so annoying? Is it good? Is it bad? Should I punch them do I want to punch them in the face because I'm meant to want to?
Exactly.
Or is it just something they're doing? Like, so.
Because the whole Ken Joffrey thing, I watched that and I was like, what a little piece of shit. I can't stand him. And then I saw a thing about him being hated, and I was like, it made me sort of like reevaluate why he was hated. And like when you rewatch it, you're like, oh, actually, he's actually a bloody good actor, and he just does it so stinking well that you just can't help but hate him because you believe it.
That's
kind of wild in a way.
Another person who's been affected by that is, I think it's the voice actor who plays Dutch from Red Dead Redemption 2. I believe it's him. I was told that there was some, and I'm like, this is like older information in my brain that I didn't like digest as well because I wasn't plugged into the content at that time, meaning I wasn't like a Red Dead 2 fan at the time. But since I've been playing it, I'm pretty sure it's Dutch. His voice actor has quit voice acting because he did Dutch so well, he got death threats for it. And so he was just like, fuck that. Like, that's crazy. So he kind of like quit voice acting. He doesn't want his information out on the internet. And I just think it's kind of one of those things where like, this is what you were billed to do, and you did it a little too well, kind of, unfortunately, because now people think you're
Yeah.
shit.
Well, this is the dark side of fandom or like pop culture fans as well, because it doesn't happen all that often, but it definitely happens in sort of music and movies and that. But you do have those like psychotic fans that just take it way too far.
Yeah.
And actually, like there's certain genres. So sci-fi seems to suffer worse with it. So the likes of Star Trek and Star Wars and even Buffy to a degree, people just take it exceptionally far.
Yeah.
And Star Wars really, probably comes to mind. Even though a lot of those fans that are hating on Star Wars have genuine complaints because it is bad. Like the state of Star Wars right now is unbearable. It's complete garbage. And actually, the same for Star Trek. Star Trek should have ended with Voyager and just been done with it because, and even Voyager has its moments really. So
Well, and
anyways,
it's all that like agenda pushing stuff to me that just you can't have a good story if you're pushing too many agendas. Like you got to pick one. And so like a lot of these things will pick like 7 different like agendas they want to push, and it's like that's
sure.
it turns into complete garbage.
That's modern writing, like,
Yeah.
and I think that's the modern audience. So I believe, watching movies at the moment, I find unbearable, and the reason, sort of again, sort of being sort of somewhat introspective about this is, if you were to try and sit someone down to get them to watch something like 12 Monkeys, where it's a dark, introverted film that doesn't necessarily handhold you all that well, and flip flops between multiple different times. Brad Pitt's like at the peak of his game. Bruce Willis is at the peak of his game, and you're sort of totally invested. If you're able to sort of take that sort of slow, methodical approach to watching the film. Whereas, and this is exactly why I don't like modern Marvel, is everything is thrown at you constantly. There's multiple threads, and there has to be like an action scene every 5 minutes, and you can't just let a scene sink in. You can't have like a decent like bit of well written dialogue or like a discussion between two people. There's a film. Now this is like going way back, and I can't think what it's called. I went through like a bit of an arty film phase, and it's like a rom-com of sorts. It's got Ethan Hawke in it,
Okay.
and it's shot in one go. It's in Paris. It's like, is it like something I met in Paris or something? It's like from the 90s or the noughties, and it's shot in one take, and it's about like this American guy that meets this Parisian girl, and they kind of fall in love, but they nothing really comes of it, and the whole film is basically just those two walking around Paris for like an hour. You try and show that to a millennial, they will have it, they will lose their shit. They'll be on their phone texting or playing Angry Birds or whatever. Like that sort of film can't work anymore, where you just have one take, two people. Well, it's not actually one take. It's
Right,
cleverly
right.
cut. If they go under the bridge, then
You're
there's the
right.
cut. There's a hidden cut, and then it comes out. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a problem, and I am going to slightly shit on Whedon here. He introduced that sort of Valley Girl, that really snappy writing, which works brilliantly in Buffy, but when other people have tried to execute the Whedon talk, the Whedon lingo, is that the way to put it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way.
I don't think it works. I don't think it works. I think some other people don't quite understand that, because it's so nuanced and so tightly written. It works.
Yeah.
And also, you don't have to apply the same thing to every fucking film, because if you watch 12 Monkeys, I don't want Valley Girl speaking 12 Monkeys. It doesn't
Yeah.
work. You don't need that in every film, and unfortunately that's kind of carried through through nearly everything, unfortunately.
Well, and I think like thinking
So
on like
that
snappy
also shows how
writing.
brilliant it was.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Well,
shows it shows how brilliant it was.
a-
So
and it
it's kind of like
wasn't.
a double-edged sword.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think Buffy too is just so well balanced with what's going on versus what's being said. And then Whedon at this time, I don't know about modern day, but like at this time he does let the audience like sit in sync with things. And at this time like audiences are still pretty okay with that. I think there are a bunch of people who are not voices that are pushed, obviously, because if they were voices that were pushed, then obviously you would have more films that had the like the pauses and letting people sync with things. But there is, I think, an audience for it, and I think there is a group of people who's kind of like you, like, why can't we just have nice movies anymore, and why does everything have to be like so ADHD filled and fueled? And
Yeah.
that's kind of what it is
If you,
to me, is your attention
if you
span is so
I,
small.
yeah, if you don't have a fight scene in 5 minutes, you're not interested. It's and a good example of that is like Matrix 1, fantastic. By the third one, where you're just like, I have no idea what the hell's going on. There's just a fight scene followed by a fight scene followed by exposition. Like it didn't make sense. They just tried to take the Matrix and plus it, or pump it up even further, and it doesn't work. You need, it's almost like that. You need the bitter with the sweet. You need those pauses, those reflections. And actually, season 1 and 2 is full of them. There's a few points where or even look at the one of the most famous episodes. It's no speaking in it at all. So
Yeah.
I do think Whedon knew what he was doing and executed it incredibly well.
Well, yeah, and I think too it has to do with the actors and the actresses. I mean, clearly they know what they're doing as well. Like, it wouldn't have been so popular if Buffy herself wasn't such a good character, or Spike, or whoever, Cordelia. I mean, Cordelia is just her character.
She's wonderful, wonderful. I rewatching it, I adore Cordelia more than ever.
Yeah,
She's just like Charisma Carpenter's just bloody brilliant. I think
so
out of
good.
everyone, certainly in season 1 and 2, other than maybe Spike and Drusilla or James Masters, I think she arguably knows her character better than anyone.
Oh yeah, yeah. She is so like confident in what she's doing, and she says some of the dumbest shit, but with the utmost sincerity that like
Yeah,
you can't hate her for.
complete conviction.
Yeah, like you're
It's
like, all right,
wonderful.
this bitch really is like believing in this, like whatever. Also, hi native, hi dope frag. Yeah, she is she's too funny. Like, I just love Cordelia in the show. Like, she's just so good.
I know we're jumping ahead, but I think it was last night I watched it. I'm pretty sure the episode "Lie to Me," right at the end where no, it's not. Sorry, it's not. It's a Reptile Boy, where they chop the like the worm thing that comes out of the hole with the frat boys, and because Cordelia and Buffy are chained up at the time, and they get freed up by Angel and in fact, actually, almost everyone's there.
Yeah,
But
it's
anyways,
kind of group effort.
Cordelia says something like, "I hate you guys. Strange things always happen when I'm around you," and then like slinks off. It's just, and she does it with such conviction, and just it's beautiful. It's so wonderfully written.
Yeah, and she's so like she's so funny. Like, I love her
I'm
unironically like coming up to Buffy and like, how's the vampire slaying? And they're like, what the hell? You can't just say that. And she's like, guys, relax. I'm not gonna say that to everyone. Like, I'm just saying it to you guys because like.
And in that episode as well, there's a line that was really clever because this sort of shows Cordelia's character. If you remember correctly, Cordelia basically hounds Buffy to go to this frat boy thing because one of the guys takes a liking to Buffy.
Yeah.
And like eventually drags her there. After they get kidnapped, she goes, how did I let you convince me to come here? And that's such a typical like Cordelia thing. It's like, I am so perfect that I wouldn't be stupid enough to be lured into this trap. It's Buffy's fault. It has to be. Like, it can't be Cordelia's fault. And it's so wonderfully done. It's such a subtle line. You almost miss it. And you go, actually, that really, like, shows Cordelia's character.
She unironically is like, I have never done anything wrong in my entire life. She's that line. It's so good.
Oh, and wait until you see her in Angel, especially, like, middle season 1 when she's living in squalor and... Oh, beautiful. Like, how they move her character is just genius.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But we're not meant to be talking about Angel and season 2. We're meant to be talking about I, Robot, You, Jane, which I think we can probably do in a handful of minutes.
Yeah.
So let's jump onto that straight away.
My biggest bone to pick with this episode is that they're like, Moloch is like he's a god he's a demon who wants your love, and he's a corrupter. And that's kind of true, but Moloch is originally a Canaanite deity, and I'm a freak, so I know this. And the thing that bugs me about it is that, like, Moloch, the way they would worship Moloch is they would have a bronze statue of him with his hands together, palms out in front of him, and they would have a brazier under the statue, and they would put, like, fire in the brazier and stoke it really hot, and then they would put a live baby in his hands, and he would just melt the baby to death and kill it. Like, that's so
he's an unpleasant character then.
Yeah, I'm like, you really could have done something way more sinister with Moloch, considering the history of Moloch as a deity. That kind of disappoints me about this episode, but I do really like the end of, like, how he looks in the end. Like, I think it's even better than his original demon form. Yeah. I'm like, that's so punk rock, dude. It looks so rad.
The problem is I work in technology, so, like, it's kind of like when you ever watch a show with hackers in, and they're like, click, 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 I'm on the mainframe, click, 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 I'm now penetrating the firewall, blah, blah, and you're like, oh, shut up. Like, it's kind of like that thing where you go, oh, fuck off, you've just scanned in a demon to the internet. Piss off.
Yeah.
It's such a... The whole premise for me is flawed. I don't like the premise. And I couldn't find much redeeming qualities with it other than Jenny Calendar, who she's wonderful.
This is her first episode.
Yeah, she becomes quite not major for Giles certainly, but like she's a decent character, and I enjoy when she's there.
Oh yeah, and the way I do love the way she just rolls with the punches. Like, she's like, you're gonna have to convince Jenny Calendar there's a demon on the internet, and he's like, there's a demon on the internet, and she's just like, that makes sense, and he's like,
yeah, that makes sense. I'm a techno pagan.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? What's one of those?
It's so fun.
Like, unfortunately, they do like exactly what I said with Willow, where it's like, I've just got onto the mainframe. They do that whole thing with her. Like, I just find it all a bit cringe.
I will say,
up for it being the geeky boy, which I mean, kind of is partially his fault.
Buffy camp. That's hilarious.
And then the fight with the metal Moloch. I don't know. It did very little for me. I do like this. Like, this before, so.
I do like this, like, storyline of, like, you were catfished by a demon on the internet because, like,
sure,
that's basically what happens to some people.
I think, I wonder if was the 2001 when that Catfish movie came out, the MTV one. I wonder if this would have been better if they sort of worked that in more, or maybe it's just so ahead of its time that you know.
I think it was a little bit ahead of its time, or else they probably would have used the phrase, because this like, it's not necessarily like something that was like it's very like minute, the level of panic like Buffy has, and then she thinks Xander is exacerbating her panic because she's like, you don't know this guy. He's just someone on the internet. And then Xander makes the point, like, if I'm in an old lady's Dutch chat room, who's to say I'm not an old Dutch lady? Like, you have no idea. And so, like, it really early on introduces the problematics of being online. And so, like you said, and this has to be in like 97 or 98, so it's not like catfish came out. That wasn't like a phrase at the time period. And so
Yeah.
I think he just really early on caught on to this, like, he caught whiff of this issue and was like, I'll just write an episode and throw that in there, which I mean, it's one of those ones where, like, yeah, the hacking is stupid and blah, 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 but I do enjoy Willow, poor Willow, like, the first time she's really into someone, it turns out to be a demon. That sucks.
A demon, yeah.
And then,
well, other than Xander, obviously.
oh, yeah, yeah. Well, and I love Moloch's line where he's like, right now, there's a man on the internet paying for his mother's life, and he's like, good for him. And I'm just like, what? That's one of my favorite bits, but yeah, other than that, I mean,
well, he's evil.
it's kind of like a meh kind of an episode. I mean, it gives Willow a good. The one thing it does do is this is a character development
yes,
episode
Willow's
for
the
Willow.
Strongest character. Yeah, Willow's by far the strongest character. Kind of everyone pretty much runs second fiddle to her. Yeah, that's the strongest thing is Willow. I didn't particularly enjoy the writing. I didn't find anything terribly funny. It's probably a 5. It's like
Yeah.
right then in the middle for me. It's not bad, but it's borderline bad.
Yeah.
It's for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think they could have done like a lot more with this. I do think, because I worked in high school with a scanner. That was one of my main jobs, is just scanning documents for the attorney I worked for. So like the fact that it's like we accidentally scanned this demon into the internet, I was like, shit, that could have happened to me, dog. Like but no, like yeah, it's not like there's nothing pivotal to it per se. Even the development Willow gets in this episode, you can kind of just ascertain how much she developed going forward. Like, so yeah. And then I don't think you get any Angel in this episode, which makes me sad. And then there's certainly no Spike, so it loses points for those things.
Spike doesn't arrive just yet. Yeah, no Angel from the looks of it. I do not see Dave Boreanaz in the list.
Thank you, Jimmy Linsbucks. Appreciate you.
Let's jump past that because I always find that I found it a bit of a chore to watch, if I'm being genuinely honest. The puppet show, I remember vividly saying I didn't like it very much prior to watching it.
Yeah.
And I actually quite enjoyed it.
No way. Okay.
Now, I don't know if that's me getting sort of softer as an older man, or like you said, when it's one thing watching it, but it's another thing watching it and looking for things to discuss. It's actually quite it's borderline slapstick comedy episode.
Yeah.
And it kind of works, kind of.
Well, I think, too, the stuff that they're forced to do... Like, I do love, at the very end, you finally get to see Buffy and Willow and Xander perform the little skit they're doing. And it's just
that ending credit scene is hilarious.
It's great.
It's so good.
That's probably, like, my favorite part, because, like, they're dreading this performance.
It is.
And they're like, anything we can do to get out of it, basically. And they're like, oh, thank God there's a demon, maybe we won't have to do it. And then they end up having to do it anyway, and you're just like... It's so good.
My biggest complaint is the puppet itself is very goofy. So you've obviously it's a supernatural show, so you're sort of suspending disbelief anyway. But you've really got to suspend your disbelief because it's very goofy seeing a 2.5 foot wooden puppet, mouth flapping around and like some, I don't know where he's from because I don't really know American states or that, well, I'm guessing like a New Yorker sort of like,
yeah, somewhere up there,
Brooklyn-y sort of, gruff voice. So you kind of really got to suspend your disbelief. But the only other complaint, and I've made this argument a few times, is the fucking power levels. Why can Buffy not just pick up a 2-foot wooden doll and launch it through a fucking window? How does he almost get the better of her? It's so fucking daft, and it really bothers me because obviously I know partially it's because we know what happens later on, and the demons and the big scaries that they face later on. So a 2.5-foot wooden puppet should be no match for the Slayer.
I had to cover my mouth because I was
that,
laughing so hard at the image of Buffy just picking him up and launching him out like the top window of the school.
Yeah, just launching him because you could.
She just like palms his head and like chucks his ass.
Yeah, I mean, and he's wood. You put a fucking match to him and he's dead.
Well, and I think Buffy even says something like, "Your puppet keeps talking like that. He's gonna be a Duralog in a second," and you're like, "Damn, yeah, like set that bitch on fire."
Okay. So I'm guessing Duralog's like a fire thing, because it's not a.
Yeah.
A thing in the UK.
I'm impressed. It was even used though, because like in California, in this area, there's not really any snow, so like you wouldn't really need fires and fireplaces and stuff. But a Duraflame log is or a Duralog, shortened.
Like a paraffin-soaked log from the name, I'm guessing.
Yeah, basically, it's like you go buy it at the store. It comes in a little package. You set the whole thing on fire, and it'll burn for a good while. It's also a really good like fire starter if you've got like wood, but you are too stupid to be able to,
You've got a similar thing. I mean, it's just a paraffin-soaked, MDF log. But I mean, I don't know what they're called. I would never have known Duralog. Funnily enough, and it's another log-related thing. I had to look it up. There's a song by the Dirty Heads, and I know you're a fan of the Dirty Heads as well.
Hell yeah!
And they talk about playing with Lincoln logs, and I didn't know what that meant. So like, it's quite interesting that like, so I had to literally Google like what the hell a Lincoln log was, but it's interesting like there's things like that which I completely missed at, so I missed that joke 100% until you said it.
Yeah. So she
like just watching Duralog, you go, I don't know what that means, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, especially if I mean, like you saw this episode first probably like a good 20-something years ago, so it's not like you could just sit there and Google something like.
Exactly right. Yeah.
But especially like you wouldn't have like the people also are like, well, Google existed back then, and you're like, yeah, but like the steps you would have to take to get to Google, you would waste like 30 minutes to an hour just to boot up your computer and get on the internet in order to get the answer.
Back in those days, it would have been a family shared computer in the lounge pretty much.
Yeah. Certainly
was for us, and I think most of my friends were in like a similar situation where like the home PC was sort of in the lounge or lounge adjacent. And then everyone had dial-up. I knew one person who had ISDN, which was like the shit back then. I don't even know if you get ISDN in the US.
That's hilarious.
And that was a meg. That was quick.
Yeah.
So and then dial-up. I mean, I'm gonna maybe do a little bit of TMI here, but back in the day, looking for porn on dial-up was hilarious. You made sure when you clicked on that image, you wanted that image, because it would literally load like line by line by line by line.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, those boobs are good. Let it load. Oh, those boobs are bad. Close it. It was a chore. And I don't think Google was around at this point. I'd say it would be like Yahoo or Ask Jeeves or something like that. I think Google's later. It's like 2001 or something like that.
Yeah, because I think Google bought out Ask Jeeves, so then it became Google.
Something like that. Yeah.
But
anyways,
takes forever to load anything. You wouldn't just go Google what a Duralog was back when you first saw this thing.
Certainly not in '98 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And the only other thing it's similar to the one with the pack where Willow sort of stands there and willingly gets taken hostage, and Giles does a similar thing where it's like, hey, come lay your head in this trap, and he's like, okay. So why is it on my head?
Yeah.
so daft. It's so, like, again, like sometimes I'm sure you could look. I'm not a writer. I can't think of a way of making it better, but I found it's just a little bit goofy.
I would think even just knocking him out and putting him on there would have been better.
Knocking him out would have made more sense.
Yeah, because like he's a demon. Why wouldn't he just knock him out? Like, I get
Yeah.
he's not at he's not in full peak form right
Right.
now, but at the same time, like,
Yeah.
he doesn't want that guy getting away. And he doesn't want to hurt the brain, so I get that, but you wouldn't have to knock him out in the head. You could, like, give him something to drink and,
Gas him or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Chloroform or something clever. It just felt it's those moments where Willow's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna stand here with a knife to my throat." Yeah, sell it. You're like, that line doesn't break the whole illusion. It's daft.
Yeah.
And it's daft having Giles willingly go and put his head underneath a great big blade. That being said, I found it really funny, and I found like the sick kid. I can't even think of his name. That was
Morgan.
the puppeteer. Morgan, thank you. I like the whole the premise was just fun, goofy but fun, and there's a lot of funny lines. Like I said, borderline slapstick, especially the ending and a lot of the stage props in that. It's not that bad.
I think too, something that really, like, makes the episode so much better is that diversion of expectation, because you expect the puppet to be the bad guy. I mean, I grew up with Goosebumps, so I'm like, no, it's a dummy, he's the bad guy, obviously, duh. Like,
and it's almost halfway through the episode before you even find out that it's not the dummy, and it's set up incredibly well. Like,
well, and I think too, like, there's this concept, like, Xander's like, are you sure we can trust this guy? And Buffy's like, I leveled with him, like, I'm pretty sure he's on the up, because he's like, I'm a demon slayer that got trapped in this dummy, and you're like, sure you are, guy, like, shut the hell up, you're the demon, you're not fooling me. So, like, the first time I watched it, even until the end, even until he, like, stabs the demon and then, like, his spirit disappears from the dummy, I was like, but are you really though?
to do the double twist, as it were.
Yeah. Which I'm glad they didn't do it, but I think it's such an interesting twist in the first place to be like, oh no, the dummy is actually like a good guy, and you're like, what? I'm sorry, what?
My favorite bit of it though is again, it's almost always Xander doing something. When Xander steals the puppet from the teacher and has it sat opposite him and is talking to the dummy, and then it disappears, and he jumps up on the chair, shitting himself, because that's exactly what you would do. You'd be like, okay, what the hell's going on? It's actually
Well, and I think too, like, one of the things that pisses me off is when he shows up to Buffy's bedroom and Buffy, like, tells everyone, and they're like, oh, so, like, a cat, and she's like, no, it wasn't a cat, it was that fucking dummy,
like
and they're like, are you sure it wasn't just a cat? And she's like, I'm positive it wasn't just a fucking cat, like, I'm the vampire slayer, you morons. And you're like, why, like, yeah, why are you not believing her? Like, a cat is gonna get the jump on her and it's gonna freak her out that bad? Like, shut the hell up, she's the vampire slayer.
Yeah.
Which I think is a little bit of, like, telegraphing issues down the line, because there are some episodes where they really doubt Buffy, and I'm like, she's the fucking Slayer! Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, especially sort of beyond season 3 in that, there's some, especially with Spike in that, when things get really strange.
Yeah.
But I think what's nice about this episode, you sort of got this, having, like, the Monster of the Week set up where you have different things going on. You're able to have I, Robot, You're Jane, a not very good episode, but played quite straight. Then you can have something like this goofy, and then the next episode, Nightmares, is like way serious, way serious. Actually, so is the episode after, kind of, with the Outer Mind, the Invisible Girl one.
Yeah.
Where
I find that one really sad. That one really, like,
the subject matter is really brutal. I don't think it's quite as brutal as Nightmares, but it's the next two episodes are like, you've got like two quite goofy episodes, one almost slapstick, and then you go into like two heavy episodes.
And that's the thing that I really enjoyed about Buffy. I just love that Buffy wasn't afraid to do this, like, big range of shit. Like, we're gonna have a slapstick episode, and then we're gonna have one that's, like, borderline breaking your heart, and you're like, what?
Yes,
it's so good.
Well, let's jump onto that. So, a puppet show, I'd probably give it like a 7, maybe even 7.5. I remember hating it, and then I watched it and I went, oh, I quite enjoyed that. I could rewatch. I think it's going to become not a favorite, but like a, like a, I don't know.
For me, this is one of the ones I was like, I didn't want to rewatch the most in this season.
Exactly.
So like, I would still, for me, it's like a 5. Like I could take it or leave it, but it's not like
really?
bad.
Okay.
It's not bad to me at all. Like if someone was like, my favorite episode of Buffy is the Puppet Show, let's watch that one, I'd be like, okay, whatever. Like I wouldn't like fight them on it, but at the same time, I'm not gonna fight to watch the Puppet Show.
Right.
It's just not my.
I kind of went the other way. So like, I remember not enjoying I, Robot You, Jane, and I think I disliked it even more than I remembered. And then the Puppet Show went the other way. I remember really disliking it and actually quite enjoying it because I just, out of those silly moments, I just kind of sat there smiling. So, and we all need to smile every now and then. So I don't know. I just enjoyed it.
Yeah,
7.5 for me.
And that's no worries.
Anyway,
I mean, this one
onto the 2 dressing, especially nightmares. So episode 10, nightmares.
Nightmares for me is like a 10 out of 10 episode because
it's probably the best episode. Is it the best episode of the season? It's in the top 3 of the season.
It fucking kicks ass.
I could understand why you would say it's your favorite of the season, but it should be in the top 3.
Oh yeah, for sure.
At least.
For sure in the top 3. It's so like it's so unexpected, and especially like even as you're going through the episode, you're like, who the fuck is this kid? And you think maybe he's some evil kid, and then it turns out he's just a victim. And I think too, like the fact that they like this is like childhood psychological trauma, like that they're exploring.
It's a very heavy subject matter.
And it's so good. It's so good. Because even for Buffy, we explore Buffy's childhood trauma, which is her parents getting divorced. And her somehow thinking that that's, like, her fault. Because Buffy is still technically a child, even though she's, like, the Slayer and everything. Yeah, because of her dad showing up. And I just, that scene, I was like, the first time I watched it, I was like, what a piece of shit. Like, I wanted to punch this guy in the face. Like, I was so mad. And I was like, how dare you say that to Buffy? Like, that's fucked up. Because he just shows up and he's like, yeah, Buffy, I think we owe it to each other to be honest to each other. So I just want to let you know, like, you're the reason I divorced your mom. And I kind of want to stop seeing you on these weekends. Because I don't really get anything out of them. And I just don't really enjoy spending time with you. So now that we're both adults, and you're like, what the
right
fuck?
At the end.
Yeah, like obviously it wasn't him. It's because everyone's living their nightmares in this episode, and I think that it's so fascinating.
So, I mean, we'll go spoiler heavy. What I really like about this is that it's I'm sure I've said this in a previous episode where for me the scariest episodes, or even not necessarily Buffy in a show, is when the evil is perpetrated by like a human, rather than a demon or something like that. Because a vampire is a vampire. It needs blood. It's something. It's an evil thing. Like it doesn't have emotions like a human does. So in this episode, where the baseball coach, so it's a exploration of like human evil using the Hellmouth's mystical energy as a way to explain how people are having their nightmares come to life, as it were.
Yeah.
Through this kid, and the evil is actually the baseball coach, just a human man that's just a total POS.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it hits so much harder, because if it was like the scary man, the club guy, if it was just that thing that could project nightmares into you, it wouldn't be that scary. It's just like a creepy, weird club man thing. Who cares?
Yeah.
The evil is actually the human nature in a way, and that's so much more effective.
Well, and I think too, like when he shows up in the end as just a guy, like that hits so hard, because he shows up and you're like,
exactly,
who's this bitch? And he's like, oh yeah, I come here every day in the hopes that Billy will wake up. My lucky
My
number
number 42,
19.
whatever is 19. Thank you.
Yeah, and he's just and immediately the Scooby Gang is like, this motherfucker. They all like bounce on him, and I'm like, good for you guys. They're like, this bitch, and just like, yeah. But I think too, like, it's so interesting because it's like, I mean, the crux of it is this coach's fault, but it's like an exploration of like how it feels to be a kid in a situation like that, because when you're a kid in a situation like that, you cannot fight back. So the scary guy is like, not even Buffy can really fight him, because in Billy's mind, that's how the coach is to him. And I think that is so like powerful, and then also so interesting that Joss Whedon was able to like tap into like human psychology and pick up on that and put that into this episode, because it's so important that like this kid really is like, he's like, no, he's impossible to defeat. Like, you don't understand. Like, he's gonna kill us all, basically. And that's how it feels to be a kid and being abused. Like, your perpetrators are literal giants compared to you. They are so much stronger than you. And it doesn't matter, like people who are like, well, why'd the kid let that adult do that? I just want to kill them. Like, I literally want to throttle them, because I'm like, are you stupid? Like, that's a giant compared to that child. Like, and
yeah, so you've hit on a really good point there, and it could have been contrived by making it the actual dad of the kid.
Yeah.
But because it's a adult senior figure in that kid's life that he looks up to, makes it that much more powerful, in my opinion, because you're put into the care of that person with the assumption that they are going to be looking out for your best interests. And I'm sure we've all had situations like that where you're left with, obviously not so much now for me, but I'm certainly thinking about my child, where it's like, I have like deep concerns about taking him to school or whatever, because you don't know these people, and there could be a psychotic coach who,
well, and it's not even just
kid. It's dark.
Well,
it's really fucking dark.
And I think even aside from him like beating Billy to the point of putting the kid in a coma, I think even just him blaming Billy, and that's like even just that is terrifying, because like I have a friend of mine
that's
who
the mental abuse.
Yeah, like I have a friend of mine who went to school, and because of some comments his third grade teacher made to him about his weight, he became bulimic and anorexic, and that's how he like lives his life now. And instead of throwing up after he eats and stuff, like he just works out a ton, like a ton, like an abnormal amount, because he is so afraid of being fat because of something his third grade teacher said. And so like Billy in this instance, his coach is blaming him for the loss of the game, and Buffy's like, there's not 11 other players on the team, like why is it all on you? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And so it kind of helps Billy, like, it doesn't undo Billy's trauma, but it does help him overcome that stronghold for him, because it really is like he blames himself. Like, he's like, I lost the game for us. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, there's other players on the team. Like, there's 9 innings. Like, it couldn't have just been you failing every fucking time. Like, there's other people that should have been able to step up and step in. And so that helps him undo that part of the trauma. And it's not going to be a perfect fix for Billy, but obviously the show's not about Billy, so we don't get to see that. But I just think that part is really important too, is like, an abuser is not just doing things physically to you, they're also mentally attacking you.
Yes, exactly. And I think what's so clever about it as well, Josh Whedon or someone knew that the important part was having Billy overcome it, not Buffy. Defeating, and she somewhat. I mean, she fights the clubbed armed demon guy. So she's physically, defending Billy, but ultimately it's Billy who's the one who who escapes, through his, I guess through his mind in a way. So it's again, it's a mental fight, opposed to a physical fight, and again, it's so clever that, in hindsight, that Buffy couldn't defeat the clubbed armed man. He was too strong for her. sometimes the physical fight isn't where it's at; it is the mental fight. So it's incredibly well done.
Yeah.
And I think they managed to weave between an incredibly serious like subject matter, and they still managed to inject humor
Yeah.
with Xander and the clowns and being naked,
And Willow
and Willow
too.
with not being able to sing.
Yeah, her opera performance, just like,
Brilliant.
oh, we've been looking for you everywhere, and she's going to sing this opera song, and she's just like, what? Like, that's a nightmare on so many levels, dude. Like, I can't sing, let alone sing opera. I don't even know the words or the lyrics or the tune. And they're just like, yep, your turn.
Yeah.
And she's like, ah.
So you're taken through these like emotions, and then Xander's being chased down the hallway by a psychotic clown that's got one of the most sinister laughs I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah.
It's really well done.
And then I also love, too, like, the seriousness of, they're like, where do you think Buffy is? And she's like, I don't know, probably that graveyard over there. Like, when did the school get one of those? And they're like, oh, yeah, it's nighttime over there, and it's a graveyard. And so Buffy, one of Buffy's greatest fears, it turns out, is being buried alive and then turning out to be a vampire. And so that really comes... Someone pointed out that really comes back later on when the gang brings Buffy back to life, because they don't dig her up first. She has to dig herself out of the grave, which is part of her nightmare.
She does, doesn't she?
And
yeah,
so
she does.
that's like extra traumatizing for her. So they've taken her out of heaven, they've forced her to live one of her nightmares, and they expect her to be grateful for it. And I'm like, you knew you were doing the ritual, why wouldn't you have unburied her first? Like, come on, that's kind of a shithouse thing to do. But, unless it's part of the ritual, I don't know, I haven't got to that episode yet, but I don't think it is. But, and I think Giles, this is like such a good moment for Giles too, because they're like, whose nightmare is this? And he's like, it's my nightmare. And they're standing in front of Buffy's grave. And
that's so well done.
Yeah, even just that, like,
that hits.
Like,
it really does.
He wouldn't have even needed to explain it. He could have just said, it's mine, and then they could have carried on, and it would have had probably even a little bit more weight than it does, but it still carries such weight that he's like, this is my nightmare. Like, right away.
What I also really appreciated was it wasn't an episode that truly developed the Master, but they managed to weave him in so cleverly because of it being her nightmare that he escapes that, which it's so well done because it's kind of teasing what is to come.
Yes,
a couple episodes time.
Solid foreshadowing.
But it's almost like a Dallas, the Dallas thing, where it was all a dream, but it actually has weight to it. Like it's so much more cleverly done than that.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it, and it's a 9 probably for me. Maybe a top 3, maybe even the best episode. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for me, I'm a sucker for anything that taps
subject matter though.
Yeah, for anything that can tap on childhood trauma so well and not make it something like it's so cool because, like, one of the things I love about this episode, it's horrifying to find out what happened to Billy, but we don't have to see what happened to Billy, and
yes,
that's like my fucking jam. It's so good.
That's a really good point, and this also loops back a little bit to what we're discussing in the intro, where with modern shows they kind of feel like they have to show you everything, or modern movies they have to show you everything. And I think it's because of how dumb millennials are, without being rude to every millennial, that you kind of need to spell it out to them. And actually, your mind, and again, this sort of loops back into the episode, your mind is way more powerful than seeing an image.
Yeah.
So, like that Billy's been beaten, so your mind will probably go to the worst, most horrible thing.
Oh, yeah. It's the monkey's paw.
Right, yeah.
Like, where you get to that wish where she wishes her chopped to pieces son was back to life. And, if you've ever seen it on stage, it's incredible because they're all looking off stage and you're waiting for this thing to show up, and it never does because they unwish it.
Does, yeah.
Because, so you never, like, they never have to put someone in a chopped up outfit, and they don't have to, because whatever you're imagining is so much like, because you get that information. He was grinded up to pieces, chopped to pieces at work, in the mill or whatever. So like your imagination is way worse than whatever they're gonna put on that stage.
Exactly right. And Whedon was smart enough to not have, and the coach, who is the complete villain of the piece, is there for what, 30 seconds, a minute sort of thing. He's not, I mean, he's definitely alluded to or hinted at a handful of times, but he's not a major character.
Yeah.
But he drives the entire episode.
And I think
it's
too,
it's so much more clever doing it that way.
Yep.
Than just being like, oh, here's a scene with Billy being beaten on the baseball field. Oh, you know, here he is. They could have done flashbacks.
Yeah.
And it would have ruined it. It genuinely would have ruined it.
Oh, so absolutely, yeah.
It's way more smart.
And I think the reveal, too, because you have this club-handed guy chasing them around this whole episode, and then when he shows up, he's just a dude. Like, it's so good. Just like, who the fuck is this? And then it's like, this was the guy that nearly killed Billy, and all the Scoobies are like, we gotta kill this motherfucker. And, like, they do not let him go. They're like, yeah, right, son of a bitch. You're not going anywhere. We're getting the cops in this room. And it's just... It's
clever as well. He's got a club for a arm, which is obviously, you know, baseball club.
Well, and you think about...
This little just hints.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, too, it can be, like... It can be a little bit of both of, like, a metaphor for the baseball, but also just, like... That's how it feels to Billy, like his fist, because I'm sure he's not just beating him with a baseball glove. I'm sure that is part of it, but I think if it was only the baseball bat, like probably he would have gotten arrested right away. Like and Billy would be probably dead. But I think too, like if you beat a kid with a baseball bat, you're the baseball coach, the little league coach who was supposed to take him home, like you're starting to look a little too suspicious. So the fact that his hand is just a club is just like, that's how it feels to Billy, is just he's being beat down, like, and I mean literally, and then also metaphorically. And so I just think this episode is a 10 out of 10 for me, because like I said, I'm a sucker for anything that deals really well with psychological trauma, especially children and psychological trauma. Like I just think this whole episode has really good, like, these are the psychological traumas everyone's dealing with, and Willow's and Xander's are really minute versus Buffy and Giles and Billy, and I love that.
I'm naked in front of everybody versus I'm dead.
Yeah, you're like, shit, I'm a vampire. Yeah,
I'm being chased by a goofy clown. I can't sing in front of everyone. Yeah. But again, you needed that. You need that. You need that levity, because, and it's not slapstick levity. It's just like, you know,
normal
silly moments. Yeah, that just give you, again, room to breathe, because it's such a heavy subject matter. You need Xander shoving an entire chocolate bar in his mouth going, ooh, piece of candy.
Yeah. Well, then I think too, it's so nice to see, like, because like my thing is, like, no one has, like, very few people have lived the experience I've lived, and very few people have ever lived the experience you've lived. And so growing up, when I was a kid, like, I would have friends who would be afraid of that thing in the bush or ghosts or something, and I'm like, I've literally lived and seen demons. Like, I'm not scared of that stuff. Like, that doesn't bother me. Right. I'll go check out the spooky noise. I'll go grab a baseball bat and see what that was. Like, they would always come to me for that stuff, because they're like, Hannah will do it. Hannah's not scared. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not. Like, I'll you know.
I don't give no shit.
Yeah, like, that stuff just doesn't scare me, versus, like, you know, like, and that's kind of, like, the difference between being Buffy or Giles or Billy, and the difference between being, you know, Willow and Xander. And so you have these...
And Cordelia and whatever,
Yeah, and the one guy with the spiders and stuff. You know, so, like, you have all these, like, you have this range of fears based off your lived life experience. And so I think that's an interesting factor in this episode, too. And I'm really glad that they show that, because not everybody has the same fears, and not everybody has ever had to be afraid of being buried and you turn into a vampire. Like, that's not going to be a fear everyone has, you know. But if you're Buffy and you're dealing with them on the regular, like, yeah, that's terrifying.
Pretty heavy fear. And then, actually, kind of a similar episode straight after that, with I recognise that girl from somewhere, and I meant to IMDb it because I was trying to work out where I've seen her before. Marcy Rose, there she is. Where did I see her from? The Faculty, maybe?
The Faculty? She's in The Faculty? That's hilarious.
Apparently so. She's in Argo. I haven't watched that in a long time.
Out of Sight is also a Charmed episode, which is hilarious.
Oh, I think it's Ghosts of Mars. I remember that. I mean, it's a terrible film.
No way. She's in Ghost of Mars? That's hilarious.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. But I do sometimes find, I go, I know that person, and I go look them up, and the only thing I know them from is, like, Buffy. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, I've watched Buffy so many times, it's probably just my mind going, well, I know her, because I know her from Buffy.
This is the thing you know her from. Shut up! No, it's not! Oh, yeah. She was in Lizzie Borden Chronicles, which is cool. Let's see. What would I know her from? American Horror Story, depending on what season. Probably know her from that season. She was in Bones for an episode. Nice.
A single episode, yeah.
Law and Order, of course. I feel like anyone who's ever been on TV has been on, like, Law and Order.
Yeah, or CSI or something.
Yeah.
Like one of those forever shows.
Yeah.
So yes, Out of Mind, Out of Sight.
Oh, she was in The Grudge too. That's hilarious. She's got a lot of little tiny roles, like enough that she's working, you know, which is nice, but she's not like. The Grudge is the one with Sarah Michelle Gellar, where she moves to Japan and she gets haunted by these ghosts, and they like the famous scene is the kid in the bed sheet, and then also the hands coming out of her scalp while she's showering. So she's sitting there like scrubbing her own scalp with shampoo, and then there's hands coming out of her scalp. So she just feels these hands reaching out of her scalp, touching her own fingers, which would be the grossest thing to feel. So gross and so like terrifying, because what the fuck is happening kind of a thing, you know? Like, I'm feeling fingers and they're not mine, and they're in my, like, on my head while I'm naked in the shower. Like, that is just like vomit levels of horrifying. Yeah. Like, oh, but anyway.
I thought I knew, because I'll have to explain off stream, but I thought I knew The Grudge, but it's a different film. I'll explain off stream sometime.
All right.
So yes, I felt a little bit like I couldn't relate to this. I enjoyed it, you know. Probably like a solid 6 or 7 episode for me, and I'm not trying to be sexist at all, but I feel like it's a bit more strong to the female character, because and it is plays certainly the episode is played that way, where it's you know, a girl that's been ignored, she feels completely unseen.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing. And even those who you would consider to be part of a not in clique, so Xander and Willow, they don't even recognize her. And so I couldn't relate to it that well, being sort of like an extroverted man that kind of just injects myself into, I mean, like exactly how I met Raken and yourself and so on. I sort of just turn up into a stream and go, all right, it's me, Roderick. You know, I like just inject myself. I can do that. Like, I can do that with randoms on the street, or you know, people, you know, just met. I'm quite happy to inject myself into a situation. So I find it a little difficult to relate to.
And I think too, like it's one of those things that we're like. It's one thing that, like, you're either gonna relate or not. My older brother, he's the same way. I think it's a firstborn thing, maybe, because firstborns are like, it's me, I'm here, what's up, I need to know what's going on.
Deal with it.
Yeah. And so I'm the third born. So, like, for me, I'm very much middle child, where I'm like, I'm just gonna, like, assess the situation and then try to, like, which I was never, like, this girl, what's her name? Is it Marcy, I think?
Marcy, yeah.
She I feel so bad for her because I was raised by my mom is an includer. She wants everyone to be involved in everything. Like you're not,
That's
get your
like
back off the wall. We're
yeah.
all getting on the dance floor. Like that's how my mom
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
And so that's kind of how I was raised to be. So, but I did when I was in middle school, 6th grade, going into the youth group. Our senior hires were terrifying. Like they were the kind of kids that would pants you in
Right.
front of everybody, that would throw you in the dumpster. They duct taped someone to the ceiling once. They one time shaved
We did that.
a.
I had 2 weeks detention for that. It's so funny. We were in sixth form at the time, which is like I guess kind of your kind of college-ish sort of thing. So well, we were 17, whatever that works out in American terms. And it was one of the guys that we knew birthday, and basically yeah, we brought duct tape and we just like well, it wasn't the ceiling, it was the wall. Our head of year came in and flipped out, and there's about 6 of us involved, like holding the guy whose birthday was down. We all got detention for 2 weeks,
It's
but it was
hilarious.
totally worth it. Yeah,
That's yeah.
I
And
mean, like again, that sort of shows that shows my character a bit more. Like I was always I was never in the what you would call the jocks, in our school. I was definitely part of the punks,
yeah.
or the skaters, or the burnouts. I used to kind of hop between different groups. Like I'd go and play. We didn't really have D&D, but we definitely had like the guys who would play like Nintendo and that. So I'd hop between like the gamers and the burnouts. I used to do a lot of BMXing and skating and all that. I obviously played a lot of instruments back then. So I'd hop around different groups, and so maybe that's why I just kind of can't relate to it. But at the same time, despite my story of picking on this guy whose birthday was, I really believe in sticking up for like the underdog. If I was in Sunnydale, I would have been like the guy going over and talking to her, despite not really being interested in talking to her.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think it's one of those
so
things where like for me personally, I'm a big believer in like everybody has value. So, and I want
yeah,
everyone to feel valued. Even the kids I didn't particularly like in my high school, and I went to a very small school. Even the kids that kind of annoyed me. And it wasn't that I like disliked them, they were horrible people or something like that. It was like there was one girl who was particularly annoying. And I was even nice to her because I'm like, even though she annoys me, she does have value. She's a human being and she deserves to be heard.
yeah,
And, and that's kind of like, it, it's so strange that you would have a situation like this, but I think it works better that it's a bigger school. Like Sunnydale is like, oh yeah, students go missing here all the time because of the vampires. So like, you just kind
yeah.
of know who
So
you
it could,
know.
yeah, it kind of works quite well in the situation because
I got the crew.
if you're on the health mouth, and yeah, people are going to be disappearing all the time. Having a young, somewhat good-looking girl disappear, it's not unheard of. So. Um,
Well, and you have to think
but
too, it's California, and like in places like California and Florida, it's very transient. So people are like, they want to come live
coming
the
and going.
California or Florida dream, and then they're like, never mind, this isn't for me. So they leave in a year, like
Yeah,
it's one of those things
sure.
people are constantly moving in and out of. So it's not unheard of to be like, oh yeah, that person, I think I remember them kind of, but not really. Or they come to visit or something and then they disappear forever. I have a childhood friend named Pete who he literally came for one summer and knocked on our door and wanted to play with us. He was visiting his grandparents for the summer. Never saw that kid again. So,
Right.
like, there's just shit like that
Yeah.
that happens. So, yeah, I think, like, for me personally, I don't really understand not talking to someone if they look lonely. Like, I mean,
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to get at is like if you I mean I did this back at school. If you saw a guy or a girl sat at a desk, I mean I can think of one exception, but I intensely disliked the guy for like personal reasons. The guy was just a
a
dick
dick.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like that's what my approach would have been. In fact, like funny enough, Spidey, who I'm sure I've streamed with plenty of times before, um, he's one of my oldest friends, and the reason that we're friends is exactly for this. We're sat in English. He was behind me, and I turned around. I went, "Oh, who are you? Let's be friends." And that's literally how we introduced each other. It was just like, "Oh, you sit behind me. All right." And like he's one of my closest. I would genuinely consider him like a brother from another mother.
Yeah.
I would pretty much do anything for that guy. So it just shows like, and I mean, he wasn't necessarily all that popular, especially earlier on, because he is an odd chap. You wouldn't mind me saying this. He is an old chap, and he definitely sort of he winds people up a little bit. And I know a few people, or knew a few people who were like that, and maybe that's similar to me. So maybe we're kindred folks. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I wasn't always that way. I think like being in junior high, I was scared to even go into my youth room because they would either throw you in the dumpster or they would beat up on you, and that terrified me. Which
Right.
I was never the target of that, but I remember thinking like when I was in sixth grade, like when I become a senior higher, no one's ever gonna feel this way in my youth group. No one's ever gonna feel this way in my presence because I think it's shithouse to like be afraid to even walk into the room. Like it's already intimidating enough. We're all teenagers and going through puberty and things are scary. Like especially if someone you think is cute is in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was
that's actually the worst. When you're crushing on someone, that's probably the worst.
Oh yeah, there was one time in my youth room where there was a handsome guy showed up, and I was supposed to go greet him. He was part of a group of siblings, and I had greeted his sister, and my mom was like, "Go find the brothers and go say hi to them." And I walked out, and they were playing basketball, and I saw the one brother, and I just went, "Nope," and shut the door and walked back, and I didn't say anything to my mom because I was like, I'm not saying anything to that guy. He is way too hot. I'm not talking to him. It was so wild. It's the only time it's ever happened to me in my life. But I literally saw him, went, nope, shut that door and left because I was like, can't do it. He's too hot. I'm gonna
be in trouble.
Yep. And mom later on was like, did you talk to that boy? And I was like, no. And she was like, why? And I was like, I gotta go potty. I'll be back. Like, cause like it's so like being a teenager, things are just rough. And life is weird.
Time, yeah.
So I'm like, no one should ever have to feel invisible. Like, no one should ever have to feel invisible. So I was also that kid that's like, I'm gonna go talk to that person who's sitting alone. I'm gonna go talk to the new guy or the new girl or whatever. Like,
yeah.
I'm gonna be. I don't make fun of people, so like everybody knew like they could hang out with me. Like if I did, it would be like a little bit, not like. Yeah. Oh my god, you're so fucking stupid. Like, it'd be like, bro, that was so dumb.
That is logic. Yeah. he's so nice on one hand and he's a total prick on the other. I think from my point
of view,
because I moved over from South Africa, I was forced to lose, in essence, my childhood back in Africa, and totally start over new. So it's kind of like one of those you sink or you swim sort of moments. So yeah. It was just like, well, I'm new, I'm young, I'm just going to walk around and just be like, all right, I'm Logic, let's be friends. Because otherwise the alternative is I sit there and I feel like shit.
Yeah.
And the other thing was when I very initially moved over for about 2 years, I used to get picked on relentlessly. It was like, oh, where you like taking the piss out of my accent and all sorts of like goofy ass stuff. And like I remember the funniest one in South Africa, like it's totally common to turn up to school in shorts, like short shorts. I imagine it might be similar in America. Like so, you'd wear a button-down shirt, a white shirt with a pair of shorts. It was just like normal. It was a hot day, and I turned up in shorts. And like in England, you don't wear shorts to school. It's not a thing. So I got like relentlessly ripped apart for that.
That's crazy.
And again, yeah, I was just like, but I was like, how about this? Go fuck yourself. I'm comfortable. You're sweating. How about that?
Yeah.
you know. So it's kind of like, I don't know. It's just different mindset. So again, and maybe what I'm trying to get to is I struggle to. I can empathize with her
Yeah.
because we've all felt unheard or unseen. You know, I can't say because it's a bit too personal, but there's been moments in my life where I've definitely been like, I am just grinding and nothing's changing and no one's taking any notice of me. It's fucking brutal.
Yeah.
But then you sort of like, you know, I think that's maybe why I found it a bit frustrating because I'm the type who would be like, no, to get out of this funk, go to the gym, go for a cycle, put on some music, play the drums, do something, get yourself out of that situation.
Yeah.
I can't. I can stew. I can stew for a bit, but not that long.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, especially like to the point where you become invisible.
Disappear.
Like, what the fuck? Like, bro, what? Like, and especially like I get that she's a girl in the band. She plays flute, which like to me is such a benign instrument. Like, there's no like it's very beautiful, but it's not catching. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're
it's not the drums.
Yeah, if you're the flute in the orchestra, you're not the standout. Like, you're just not.
No.
So she picks a non-standout instrument. She's talking to the mean girls first. Like, come on, dude, that's not happening for you. Like,
and I'm not trying to knock on the actress at all. You compare her versus Willow versus Buffy versus Cordelia versus Harmony, who's in it again. I love Harmony. She's very plain Jane versus the others. And I don't mean that I'm not being nasty. I think it's a deliberate casting where next to Cordelia, who's nearly a 10, well, a 7 looks plain compared to Cordelia. So
yeah.
I think it's an intentional casting where even against Willow, she's very plain Jane.
Well, and I think too, like everyone kind of has their own presence. Like, that's the thing too, is like there are some people that I've met that I'm like, you're just not you haven't picked who you are, so no one's gonna notice you because you don't even notice you. Like, you don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit of that with Marcy, where like she doesn't really know who she is, so she can't really pick a group and stand out. Like, and that's kind of part of the issue here. And I get that that's insecurity and that's teenage years and all that. Like, for me, I never understood insecurity. I was always secure in who I was. Not necessarily in, like, my body, but, like, I was secure in who I was, the kind of personality I had, all those types of things. And so, like, to me, it just doesn't make any sense to be insecure about who you are. But, like, clearly, Marcy is. Like, because she's trying to get in somewhere, and it kind of gives the feeling of, like, she's just gonna absorb whatever flavor will take her, and that's
so if she got in with the burnout, she'd become a burnout.
Yeah.
Or if she got in with a skater, she'd become a skater. She'd sort of just emulate whatever it is rather than being herself.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the issue. That's when you become the most invisible, is when you are not yourself. Like, even
chameleon almost, which is invisible.
Yeah. And like, even the girl at my school who like everyone thought was annoying, I'm like, at least she's being herself. You know, like, I can give her props for that. Like, yes, the way she processes out loud is very, very annoying, but because she would say everything you just said, but she would say it 10 times longer and, like, train wreck it as well, which is usually why it took 10 times longer, and, like, everyone would get so fucking annoyed because they'd be like, we just wasted, like, 10 minutes of class time so she could say the exact same thing you just said, Hannah, and I'm like, she's processing. That's how she processes. Just, it's fine. I'm not offended or upset. Like, just leave her be. Like, she's doing her thing. And so
sometimes those are the most interesting people as well. Look, I'm sort of getting maybe sticking off with the underdog, where like those weirdos, I'd consider myself part of that group. You know, that they're the more interesting people. I like my weirdo friends. Like, and again, like I was saying, I would hop between the burnouts, the skaters, the rockers, and so on. You know, I used to do a bit of track and field as well. Like long distance running, so I knew different groups of people, but like my core group of friends that I'm still friends with now, we were all like outcasts from like the other one, and we sort of made our own group of like, I don't know, 20 of us, which, you know, we were all part of some other clique as well, but mostly our core group, as it were.
Yeah.
And they're all weird and wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, like me, I'm just a weirdo. I always have been. And then my best friend, she's a very mature person and always has been. She's very kind. She's very like, and it was weird because she was a teenager and she was so mature. And so, like, it was one of the things I loved about her. Like, people thought she was so annoying. And I was like, that's my best friend. Like, you don't have to like her, but just know that that's my best friend. Like, I will stab you. Yeah. Like, I'm not scared. She would never do something like that, which is why she's the better one of the two of us. But I will absolutely stab you and leave you for the gators. Like, I'm not scared to do that. So, but I'm like, that's the people who are the weirdos. And, like, the other thing is, I'm like, you have no idea what she's got going on in her head or at home or whatever. And that was the thing that I always kept in mind because I worked with a lot of kids who were like, they were unruly kids, and so a lot of adults would get really fed up with them, but I'm like, that kid's parents are in and out of jail. Like, right now, like,
exactly. I was going to say, that's the truly difficult part, is when the home's fucked up, it does fuck up the kids.
I never see anyone I went to school with.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. And it's so, like, and, like, they could even have, like, the perfect home at home, but then you have, like, the baseball coach that's beating up on them. Like, you have no idea what's going on in their life. And I happen to, like, for me, because I'm so good at, I was so mature and so, like, good, and not to brag on myself, but I was so good at, like, keeping secrets and keeping things to myself and just kind of internalizing information and then acting accordingly. I usually was privy to certain bits of information, like the weird girl in my class no one liked. She had a very traumatic incident happen to her. And so
which explains why she was the way she was, sort of thing.
Exactly. And that's why she sometimes, like, people used to complain because they're like, she never comes to school, like, what's her deal? Like, and I was just like, everybody's got something. Like, just, you know, let sleeping dogs lie. Like, it's not, like, you're picking up something that you don't need to be picking up. Like, just leave it alone. Like, it's none of your business. And it's because she would sometimes just have traumatic days. And, like, the thing that happened to her was so traumatizing. And so you just don't know. And that's why it's like, be kind to everybody, be nice to everybody. You can make fun of people a little bit, don't get me wrong, but, like, you know, be wise about what you're picking on someone for. You know, if it's a short person, don't be picking on them for being short. Like, come on now. they don't have control of that.
Two things can be true. They can be short and they can be a dick. Pick on them for being a dick, not just because they're short.
Yeah, exactly. Pick on them for their shoe taste or whatever. Like, but don't, you know, but Marcy doesn't even...
You listen to the Spice Girls? Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can pick on them for whatever they choose, but don't pick on them for the things they don't choose.
They can't choose. Yeah, exactly, you're right.
But,
well, what's quite funny is, this is, like, arguably, like, for me, one of the most, like, this, I didn't know what to talk about with this episode because I just couldn't relate to it. And what's quite funny is we spent a half an hour sort of trying to analyze it through discussing where we were as teenagers and in school and all that. And it's actually kind of interesting how we've sort of processed it through our, oh God, I'm going to sound like a liberal fucking weirdo, our lived experiences. He says, air quotes in the air and palm in his face. But it's kind of true, like, we've gone through those experiences and we can kind of try and relate to Marcy. The only other thing I'd point out about the episode is I enjoyed the fact that Cordelia was Cordelia.
Yep.
And arguably the villain of the piece is arguably Cordelia.
Thank you, Coffee. Yeah, no, she is. And it's not even, like, it's so funny because I tell people, like, there's this phrase, you're the villain in someone else's story. And so, like, a lot of people will see things through their own lens. And, like, especially, like, with the issue going on in Ukraine, I'm like, the Russians have a completely different stance. And the reason we have the stance we have is because we haven't trusted Russia since the 1940s. Like, so that's why you think all these things already, because we're still affected by something that happened 100 years ago. I wasn't even alive for it. Like, you know,
Cold
like
War, Red Scare, and all that.
Yeah, and so I'm like, they think they're the heroes, just like we think we're the heroes, us Americans, but we have fucked up so much around the world, like globally, and we are certainly not the heroes in some countries. We are the villains. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind. Like, everybody has their own goals and their own agendas and their own thoughts and feelings and experiences. And so, like, even me being...
One thing I would say to that is that there is a morality, there is a right and wrong.
Yes.
So
yeah.
The one thing that pisses me off, and this is going slightly political, where people say, okay, Americans and the English are wrong for, you know, like at one point Britain or the UK was one of the biggest powers in the world in, you know, the 1800s or whatever. We were like India and so on, absolutely massive. And you can argue the same for America, but just because we, you know, arguably have done some bad things, it doesn't mean that, you know, the good things are discounted.
Right. Well, and the other thing is with that, like,
and I've noticed
some of that your generation didn't decide to do, and there are some things that even in your generation they've decided to do that you're like, I didn't agree with that. Like, I thought it was shithouse.
Yeah. And the fact is, like, I've noticed in the UK, a lot of people, because especially here, it's very easy to go, oh, I hate America, I hate the Americans, I hate what they've done, blah blah blah. And actually, I disagree. I think sometimes having the right intentions, even if things don't go right, having the right intentions and having morality is really important.
Yeah.
And I would actually apply that to the show, where, you know, what Marcy does, and I don't think they make any quarrel, because she's obviously tries to cut off Cordelia's face. So she goes to a very dark place. So just because you treat like shit doesn't mean that you become shit.
Yeah.
You kind of need to, like, you know, you need to rise above it. I know for a lot of people it's fucking difficult, especially when you're down in it. It's difficult to lift yourself up, but morality matters, and I think this episode kind of gets that across, minus like this, like, the only thing I would argue, she shouldn't have been recruited by the CIA as a spy.
The wildest fucking ending. I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, just a bit of a twist.
Yeah, just all of a sudden, oh yeah, you're now... Because I think the problem is you couldn't kill her off because she's human and she's gone through such a shit time. You couldn't have Buffy killing her. It doesn't make sense from like a morality and what, you know, from a show point of view. So they had to do something, but I don't think she should have gone like CI. She should have done time, because she's fundamentally, she's trying to cut a girl's face off. She's a bad person.
I was gonna say, at the current time point, she's completely bonkers. Like, you know, like at the end of this episode, she's completely bonkers. Like,
she's batshit mental, and that's my point. Like, morality matters, and they're trying to show it's a difficult balancing act, because like everyone treats her like shit, but that doesn't give her the right to be shit.
I just think that we should have that.
The same for America.
Yeah, I think we should have that like on a quote. Like, you know how people have like things quoted on like wood frames and hung up in their houses, like all artfully. Yeah. Just because you're treated like shit doesn't mean you be a shit. That's the next one that I want.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get the soldering iron out and I'll burn it into some wood and post it over.
That'd be the best. And you wrong. I'm not saying America isn't heroic. Like, we haven't done any good, but there are certainly times when we've done horrible things. You know, like, it just is what it is. Like,
what the UK and America and Canada and Australia, like basically all the West, Japan, I would include into that. They've done way more good than they've done bad. Insurmountably more good than bad.
Yeah,
it's not even close.
But and that's the thing, is like, you can't just dwell on the bad things. However, that doesn't mean that they like that. Oh, we get a free pass for that because we also did these good things. Like, you know, like, it's like, well, like, I mean, this girl, just because you're treated like shit doesn't mean you get to go be a shit. Like, you know.
But it brings up an interesting question about like forgiveness and that. So she goes so far. So I think if I was to have written the show, I would have made it like that she just goes so far that she's like completely unforgivable. I wouldn't have done the CIA ending.
Yep.
I would have. She would have probably been locked up, I imagine. But like, you almost need to have like someone, maybe like a Cordelia, and Cordelia does kind of say she wants that forgiveness, and I think Marcy's character just doesn't want forgiveness for whatever reason. Well, no, but then she's the one who's done wrong to her. I don't know. I'm not a good writer. I can't explain myself. It's a fine episode.
Yeah.
It's weirdly it's the one that's had us talking the most.
Yeah.
Maybe because of the morality of it all.
I think that's...
It's probably a 6 for me. 6 out of 10. It's fine.
Yeah, I would give it a 7 just because I do like the part where she tricks them into thinking she's in... Because she's, like, listening to the Scoobies, and so she tricks them into thinking she's playing flute in this room, and then, like, no, she's fucking not.
Tape. Yeah.
Yeah, and doesn't Angel come in at... Is this the one where Angel comes in at some point because there's gas leaking somewhere, and they're all gonna, like...
Oh, I meant to bring this up because if he can't breathe, then how can he smell gas?
Well, and I'm thinking like it's optional. So like again, going back to Twilight,
he just chooses if he can smell it or not.
It's just like it helps. So like he doesn't need the air, but
power levels. What can he smell? Can he not? Fucking set the rules, set the fucking power levels, and stick to it.
Look.
If he can't smell.
It's like Twilight. Twilight explained it so well. It's like he doesn't need the air. It's just natural for him. And also if he breathes through his nose, he can scent things. And since he's still a predator, he does appreciate that aspect of it.
I feel like what happened was the writers were sat there and they wrote, okay, so Giles, Willow, and Xander are now stuck down there because of the tape, the little trick they've did. Now how do we get them out of here? Buffy's tied up. She can't do it. Cordelia's tied up. She can't do it. Who's free? Angel's kind of sat there doing nothing. I know. We'll just have him walking around sniffing gas. Fucking no. Actually, I'm bringing this down to a 5.
Well, I think too he's there specifically for the prophecy book, right? Like he's delivering that to Giles.
Oh,
isn't that why he's there? So, like, he does show up, like, a little bit too on time, but at the same time, like, it at least makes sense that he's in the vicinity, because he's like,
sure.
I need this book, and Angel's like, oh, the master has it, I'll go sneak in there one day and just snag it for you, basically. Yeah, and so, here he is, he's got the book, and he's saving them from the gas, yay, Angel, and so... yeah, it's a little silly, but at the same time, because I think at this point, Angel has decided he needs to kind of stay away from Buffy, because he's like, I'm like 200 years old and she's like 17, and also I'm a vampire and she's a slayer, and it's just not a good idea, like, you know, like, because he's like, I literally want to eat her while I'm near her and kissing her, so like, it's kind of hard for me, and I'm like...
inside her.
But, no, that he loses his soul. Come on, Logic. But
I know. I shouldn't joke about stuff that's about to happen.
Yeah, but I don't
good
know. Episode.
I just think it's fine.
Yeah.
I think every time that happens, where like a power level thing is not explained or whatever, that it just winds me up because there's set rules. Yes, the world's weird and there's like the rules are broken, as it were, but you need rules in that world to make it work. So, you know, if Buffy's able to throw an elephant, then she's able to throw an elephant. So that when she fights a puppet, she needs to be able to kick that puppet's ass.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a little
like,
silly too that like, oh, she gets knocked out from this invisible girl. How does she even knock her out? I forget.
Exactly. She twonks her out. Actually, I was going to bring that. The one other thing I did quite like about it is where Buffy has to shut up, and she goes, "Shut up, Cordelia." She has to like stop and keep quiet to fight Marcy. I thought that was quite neat because if you were fighting an invisible entity, it would basically be impossible. You know, you don't know where they are.
Yeah.
You'd literally have to listen for them breathing or whatever. So yeah, and neat moments, but.
Is this also the episode where she tries to have the like heart to heart with Cordelia, and she's like, you know, this heart to heart would be working a lot better if you would shut the hell up, kind of a thing. Shut up. Yeah. I do love that line. Like, get her, Buffy. And it's funny because I do think this is kind of the episode where Cordelia becomes friends with Buffy, as much as Cordelia is like, ew, you guys are losers and I would never hang out with you. Yeah, she's like, it's kind of like that thing where like, there's some episode, I think it's towards the end of season 3 or something like that, where basically, like, it's when the school bands together to help Buffy, and they're like, she's a fucking weirdo, but she helps everyone else out, so she's asking us to do this, we're gonna do it for her.
Class hero medal or whatever they give her.
Yeah.
They give her a special.
And
it's Andrew as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
It is Andrew, isn't it? I
think so.
Because so we're going to jump. Just quickly discuss before I run down for food. I noticed in like an early episode in season 2, Andrew shows up, and he becomes kind of like
important,
somewhat serious. Yeah, later on.
Yeah.
I was really surprised to see him so early, and he's just like there. It's like, oh, that's Andrew. Weird.
Yeah. So yes.
Andrew,
I think it's Andrew. I don't think it's Andrew who you're talking about, but it's one of those three. Because it's Andrew, and then there's 2 other guys, and the 3 of them really become kind of prolific, because of what they do. Yeah, because like they're the reason Tara died. This is all so sorry.
Tara dies. Yeah.
You wrong. That is wrong. I'm dead. But like it's one of those things where like it's so cool that they do, like, because it's something like this, or like Harry Potter, where it's like these are students who are all going to the same school and growing up together. It's like, okay, well, you need the same actors to keep coming back, and so it's one of those like Amy things, or even like it's so much fun when Buffy takes a character that you're like, I've seen them like peripherally throughout,
yeah.
And then they're like, oh, this character's gonna be important now, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool, actually. Like, to me, that's cool. Like, I love that. Because, yeah, they're there, might as well use them.
Is he the one who does the clock tower shooting? He goes up in the clock tower in, like, season 3.
I can't remember.
I'm desperately looking through IMDb now.
Yeah, Andrew is the one who, he's got kind of like blonde hair and it's kind of spiked up, but he's one of the
No, the brown haired one.
Yeah, I know. He I can't remember that. Here, hang on, wait. Jonathan. His name's Jonathan.
Jonathan, thank you, Jonathan. That's it. I'm sure he's the one who goes up in the clock tower as well.
I think so. Yeah.
But sort of jumping ahead a little bit before, like I said, I've got food waiting down there. We got one more episode to discuss, which we're going to sort of lump in with like the start of season 2, because it's gonna make sense, like the way Prophecy Girl leads into season 2 with Buffy dying, and how season 2 starts. It all works really well to do those two together. I am loving season 2.
Oh yeah. It's so easy to get through. Because, you get Spike, you get Oz, you get Drusilla, you're like, this is slamming.
Probably my 3 favorite characters, Oz, Spike, and Drusilla. And they're all really early on. And it's just brilliant. It's so good.
Yeah.
I'm just like looking through there. 2 of my favorite episodes are coming up. So What's My Line Part 1 and 2. Kendra the Vampire Slayer.
Kendra. The way you do that is so good.
And then like the ending becoming so good. So good.
Yeah. Then, I love I think there's like a surprise, like for me it's surprising to love I like Lie to Me. I think that one is really complicated. Yeah. And then I also really like Ted, because I think that one gets kind of complicated. Although I do kind of want to slap Joyce a little bit.
He died in real life, the guy who played Ted, Paul or something. John Ritter. He played Paul something in the show. Yeah, he died quite a while ago, sadly.
Yeah. Because he was in the original. That's where I know him from. Is he's in the original It TV series. John Ritter is.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, he's like a horror kind of mainstay back in those days. Like he was kind of a heavy hitter in the horror genre.
He's really good in it as well.
Oh yeah,
like, so good in it.
I love, as much as Ted pisses me off as a character, I do think John Ritter plays him so well, especially the malfunctioning bit.
Yeah. And then season 3 we got Faith showing up, which I can't wait for. Eliza Dushku.
Yep.
She's just pure eye candy.
Yep.
And my wife might be telling me off and sending me to bed early.
She is so much fun too as a character, but yeah.
She's so much fun. I think that's why, like, yeah, I mean, she's a stone cold fox, but the fact that she's just out, like completely out there. She's like a, you know, I knew people like her back in the day. It's just fun, sort of punk girl.
Yeah. She is so punk
It's
rock,
great.
and then also, like, I love the way, like, she talks kind of similar to, like, the Scoobies, where they have their own kind of, like, lingo, except Faith
Yes.
has her own lingo in and of herself, and I love that. I just love that Faith has her own way of talking that's so different from everybody else, but, like, everybody just kind of jives with it, because she's the new Slayer, you have to, like, I just love that about Faith, like...
We must be getting... Wesley must be season 3 then. No, he must be soon, because surely... Is he Kendra? Is he Kendra's?
No, Kendra's is, like, a really strict guy who I don't think he ever shows up. Because she, like, explains, like, I was given to my watcher from an early age, and he doesn't allow me to talk to boys, and he doesn't allow this and that. And so, like...
I remember that. Because whenever, like, Xander's nearby, she's looking down at her feet. Oh, this is too much.
Yeah.
Xander, thank you. Oh, yeah.
Well...
Stop doing that. I'm going to get arrested in the UK for doing that.
Well, and it's so funny because, like, Kendra is supposed to be, like, the original Buffy foil, where they're, like, she's a Slayer, but she's different from Buffy, and the way they did that is she's such a rule follower, kind of, like, strict goody-goody, and that, I think it wasn't interesting enough, like, it just wasn't different enough, because she's such a good person.
And Kendra wasn't played by, no offense to the actress, she wasn't played well enough, and now, I don't know if it's the actress's fault, or the director going, you're Afro-Caribbean or whatever she's meant to be.
Yeah.
Ham it up. Because whatever we watched her in, I can't remember what it was now. And my wife was like, oh, look, it's Kendra. And she's totally normal in that. So I can only assume someone or her made the decision to, like, totally ham it up. And the problem is she's distracting, and Kendra is outright distracting.
Yeah.
What, me, Kendra? It's like, oh, what the hell are we doing? Like, she's played... And the actress may be perfectly good, but no, that's a big no.
Yeah. Well, and that's like...
Yeah, so this...
she's not mostly, good enough as a foil either, in my opinion, versus Faith, who's like, I'm gonna do what I want. So she's like got similar...
She's anti-Buffy.
Yeah, she's got similar vibes to Buffy, but then she takes it a completely different direction. So that's kind of what I like about Faith versus Kendra, because Kendra is like, you know... like, we are the Slayer, we have to do things this way, and Buffy's like, what? And then Faith shows up, and Faith's like, yeah, we don't have to do shit that you say, and Buffy's like, wait, maybe, like, tone that down a little bit, because, like, yeah, we kind of do have to do the whole world-saving thing, and she's like, fuck that, I'm gonna destroy it, and she's like, what? Hang on.
The rest of season 2 is basically angel heavy. Just like looking through it, it is super angel, especially at the end. Oh my goodness! Because Angelus, should we say, Angel Angelus heavy.
Yeah.
It's a belter this season.
Yeah, I kind of hate.
Looking through, I think it's my favorite.
Yeah, I kind of hate like I just hate Angelus because he's such a fucking spoil sport, and he's such a dickhead. Like, he's just a straight up dickhead.
That's why he's so good.
And then I love Spike, because Spike is evil.
Spike calls him out on it.
Yeah.
Spike calls him out on it. It's like, why are you trying to kill the world? The world's full of fucking walking Happy Meals. Stop being such a prick.
Yeah.
And Angelus is like this, hey, this Ben, this... Like, Angelus is the most emo fucking person ever.
Yes.
MCR in the background. He's dyed his hair. He's just come out of Hot Topic. Man, life's so fucking tough, and that's why I love him, because it's like, it's played straight, but it's so goofy in a weird way.
Yeah, well, and it's so funny because you would think it would be Spike, because he shows up in like a red t-shirt and like the long leather duster. So you would think he would be the emo one, but he like, which he kind of is later on. But like in this season, it's definitely Angelus who's like, we're gonna kill everything because fuck life. I hate living. And you're like, all right, dude, whatever.
He says as he listens to MCO.
Yeah, right, for real.
I need to get some food in me. Thank you so much, as always. It's been such a. I really enjoy these. I know we don't necessarily. I apologize to Coffee and you, Wrong. I know you guys have been chatting Hannah's chat. It's difficult to engage, especially when you're trying to like discuss a specific topic. Like, yeah, we bring up politics and that and whatever, but like we're trying to. Well, I certainly am trying to keep it directly into
Buffy, yeah.
In the Buffyverse,
Or else it becomes about Hannah and Logic personal thoughts instead of Buffy-related
otherwise
thoughts.
we'd be sat there going, yeah, the world's a bit fucked up, isn't it? Thank fuck Trump won. Oh fuck, I'm about to get arrested by Starmer and his Stasi crew. I've got to be careful because genuinely, it's that bad here. Like,
Really?
Sometimes I make these jokes. Yeah. Oh, seriously, it's so bad. Like, I make these jokes and I go, shit. Like, I could literally be on a list somewhere, getting ready to be frog marched into somewhere.
That's crazy.
It's
like
really,
really
bad.
I know,
really
like I never know what to believe when you see stuff online because like I'm sure a ton of it is staged. Like I personally, this is going to be like really controversial, especially I'm putting this on YouTube afterwards, so it'll be very controversial there probably. But like I had people at the January 6th event and they were like,
oh, did you? Oh, interesting.
We had such a hard time getting a hold of them and we were panicking because we were watching the news that day. So we were freaking out thinking they were getting gassed and shit. And they were like, there's nothing happening here. Like, there's like maybe 10 people on the steps of the Capitol building with me, but I'm not seeing any of these people breaking in. Like, I'm not seeing any of that. So maybe it's happening on the back side of the building, but like the front is wide open. I've walked in.
I watched that with the Crowder stream. So in fact, also
thank you, Coffee.
When the election was stolen from Trump, and it was because I remember watching that. I sat because obviously the time in the UK allows me to watch like the counting and the results coming in when everyone else in the US is going to sleep because it's fucking late for you, but it's first thing in the morning for us. And I remember watching like people covering up windows. The drops coming in, it would go like Trump was ahead, and all of a sudden Biden would literally have the spike that would just like enough to take him in front of the Trump. It was like I watched the steal happen live with Crowder and all that, and it's the same for the January 6th one. I watched it and I was like, this is kind of boring. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, well, and that's like what we saw was all these people breaking in and they're climbing up the walls of the Capitol building and they're marching in there and they're attacking. And I have someone who I trust his word very much, and like we were talking to him like right there and he's like, I'm not seeing literally any of that. Like I see a little bit of smoke, but it's not like a ton. And he was like, and I've been here for like hours and I have not seen any of what you guys are describing to me.
I'm going home because I'm bored.
yeah he was like, I've walked in and out of the Capitol building like 4 times now. Like he walked in and like
That's
used
wild.
the bathroom somewhere and he was like, it's kind of like dead up here.
Yeah.
So like, to me, I would trust my own personal people and their word over whatever the fuck the news is saying, because, I mean, how many times have they had to redact information? I think, like, the New York Post has had to do it over, like, 110 times in the last year alone or something stupid.
If you're interested with what's going on in the UK, the way I would put it
You're funny, Coffee.
The majority what you're seeing on X, and specifically the likes of Elon and that when what they're posting about the UK, it's pretty much true. I wouldn't follow the news stuff because that's very flowery and very pro lefty points of views. It's not good here. And when JD Vance said that there's no freedom of speech straight to Starmer's face was wonderful, because JD Vance is 100% right and Starmer was lying through his teeth. He's an absolute rotten
Interesting
liar.
pivot. I'm dead, Bernie. Yeah, no, and we have a lot of politicians on our side too that are like, they're just rotten, they're bought. Like facts are facts, guys. Like if you follow, like they always say, follow the money, because that's and then you understand why they're voting the way they are or whatever. So 100%. I mean, like it just
what almost happened to you has happened to the UK. So let's leave it at that, because I don't want the Stasi knocking at my door,
kicking
me out, because I'm a daddy. I've got to do daddy things, and that's partially why we were doing the Buffy talk, because it's all, we could easily sit here and cry about how bad things are. Let's try and put a bit of good into the world. Let's try and enjoy ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's, talk about something we love, as it were.
Something that's kind of uplifting, because I think Buffy is an uplifting show overall, so.
Overall, it is. Yeah, despite nightmares and how depressing and dark that is, it is overall. I think it's mostly a positive message.
Yeah, especially like Buffy's always overcoming things, you know, like.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone's growing.
As much as you get your ass kicked, you're still going to be able to get up and go after what you want and go after, you know, you're still going to be the Slayer, so you might as well go slay, you know. Slay queen.
What was our quote? What was our quote again? Just because life is shit doesn't mean you get to be a shit.
Yeah,
that's the final words of wisdom from Logic.
On Buffy.
Just because life is shit, don't be a shit.
That's the new tagline for the show.
That's the new tagline. Right, thank you so much.
Thank
you. We will do this again in a week's time. Thank you, everyone that did drop by.
Yes.
You are appreciated and loved.
Yes.
And you have giant penises or giant boobs. I don't know, whatever the positive for a lady is.
Yeah, I don't know.
You have a wonderful face.
Wonderful face. It glows like the sun. It's that brilliant
it glows
and bright.
Like the sun. Your radiance shines through the internet. I can feel your
radiance shines through the internet. I love it. New best compliment. Your radiance shines through the internet.
Brilliant. I'm going to get dinner. Take care.
Enjoy dinner.
Bye.